Welcome everybody to a brand new edition of my series, Interview With A Roadie. This is the series where I get to sit down with artists, band members, other roadies, and anybody else in the music industry, and we just have conversations about whatever we want to. And in today's episode, I had the wonderful opportunity of sitting down with Dean Lamb, guitarist for the Canadian technical death metal band ARCHSPIRE. And he also happens to be a pretty damn entertaining YouTube content creator as well. Now, this is one of those interviews where I felt like we could have sat here and talked for hours, man. And he's honestly one of the most humble and intelligent musicians I've talked to on this channel or otherwise. And I really enjoyed it, man. We got to talk about their brand new album, Bleed the Future, and how long it took him to write it. We talked about how he got started playing guitar and how ARCHSPIRE came to be. We talked about some recent shows they did and some plans in the future. We talked about how they run tracks live and some of his guitars and some other stuff. And we also talked about his YouTube channel and a lot of the stuff that he has going on there. So I totally enjoyed myself with this. I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this next hour-long conversation between myself and Dean Lamb of ARCHSPIRE. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I have a very special guest joining me, all the way from, well, I assume you're in Vancouver.
I'm in
Dean
Vancouver. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes,
Dean Lamb from ARCHSPIRE, everybody. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. I'm in Vancouver where everything is flooding.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the time of this recording, there's dams on the highway and and there's they keep calling them atmospheric rivers, and there's been 3 of them or 4 of them in the last like 2 weeks. And so one of the saddest parts about this, sorry to open this up so sad.
No, I didn't even know anything about this.
Yeah, it's Pacific Northwest right now is getting hammered with rain. But like sort of like a Chuck E. Cheese style ripoff kind of place with arcades and all that kind of stuff. There's one of those places that I went to a lot when I was a kid that's just like underwater right now. And I'm like so bummed out. But the good news is they have mini golf in the basement. And one of those mini golf places is underwater themed. So there we go. At least it's on brand.
Yeah, it's on brand. Man, that just gave me flashbacks to so I live in Nashville, and the first year that I moved here, like permanently from Chicago, was when we got the floods here.
Oh.
And I remember we had done a rehearsal at Soundcheck in Nashville and then left for tour. And the next day, there was 12 feet of water in the place. Like, it was something insane. And it's like where every musician in Nashville stores their gear. And it was something like $98 million of gear lost or something like that. And I was just like, holy shit.
Whoa.
That's it's insane. But anyways, dude, it's actually crazy. I didn't know anything about that. And usually you hear about that kind of stuff on the news. I hope you guys and a lot of other people are staying safe up there.
Yeah, it's pretty much all that's going on in the news right now here. I have some buddies, if you know Andrew Baina, he's on YouTube as well. Yeah, he does those like death or hardcore or deathcore lyrics, but they're really happy, and so they'll pull them out of a hat. Yeah. So he lives in the Lower Mainland as well, kind of about an hour away, but he's more in the area of the flooding. But he's up on a mountain, so it's like they're on evacuation.
Wow.
What do they call it? Like it basically like check your phone. Like if you get a notification, you got to leave your house. So that's, and he, like I said, he only lives like an hour away. So
yeah. You know what's insane is like the weather everywhere, man, has been crazy. Like when I moved to Nashville, I was so stoked to get out of the Midwest because I was like, yeah, no more tornadoes and stuff like that. And then last year we got hit by like literally downtown got hit by a massive tornado. And I was like, what is going on? This is ridiculous. Like you can't get away from that stuff anywhere. But thank you very much for your time today, man. I appreciate you jumping on here. This is really cool because, right after I did the last reaction video to you guys, a lot of people were like, oh, you should get Dean on. I bet he would do it. And I was like, well, he does stream a lot and stuff like that. So I think that would be probably pretty cool. So it's going to be fun for me to talk to you because one, gear is a big part of my thing and stuff like that. But the thing that turned me onto your band originally was just the playing skill of all of you guys, and I would love to get kind of a little deeper into that. But man, I've been so into the new record that
Oh
like
man, that's awesome.
my wife is not a metalhead. She
Mm.
does put up with it very well. But I remember right after I filmed the reaction to Drone Corpse Aviator, I was like,
Mm.
Claire, come here. You got to watch this. And then she brought our 8-month-old in here and stuff. And like the 8-month-old goes crazy over anything. She's watching, that video just ripping and she's like, yeah. But even my wife, who's heard a lot of metal through me, was just like, this is ridiculous. Like,
Mm.
how is it possible? And I'm just like, just some wild musicians out there. But for me, the incredible thing about your band is a lot of times with a lot of bands, you might get like a few just really over the top technical good musicians that stand out. But for me, it's like every single person in your band is just outstanding at what they're doing. And the chances that all you guys got into one band together is kind of mind blowing to me. So I kind of wanted to know, like, did you guys all know each other with the exception of, Jared, obviously, because he's, new within the past 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Did all of you guys know each other from a local scene, or was it just chance that you all found each other and wanted to write the same music?
Well, before we get into that, can I, if I guess you'll give me your address to send you the check for all the really nice stuff that you just said to me about all. So I'll pay you. Like, you can cut this out of the interview. Like I'll pay you for that. It was very nice.
Yeah, of course.
Pretty much what we discussed before the interview started.
Yeah. I
all
mean, that's
that
the only
stuff.
reason I do this anyway. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, and we're back. Okay. What was the question? No, I'm just kidding. The way that we found each other was Craigslist. So back in 2008, 2009, I was like way better of a guitar. Or I thought I was way better of a guitar player than I actually was. And so I've been playing for about 10 years, and I live out in the Lower Mainland at the time. So I don't live right in Vancouver, but about an hour and 15 minutes away. And I find this ad for the ad is like looking for exalted tech death wizard unicorn something blah blah blah, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, and at that time, I loved Necrophagist. I loved The Faceless. I loved Opeth. I loved Dream Theater. But what I was in a band at the time, or just stopped playing with that band. And the reason why we had split was because I wanted to go more technical and the other guys wanted to go in different directions. And I was like, let's go more technical. Let's add more. Let's do faster stuff. But it wasn't everybody's thing. So that's totally cool. So the band breaks up and I'm looking every day. I'm jamming. I jammed with this one guy, and I talk about this all the time. He's like this drummer, but he was very stoned all the time. Definitely a drug dealer. We definitely sold weed. Not like a hard time drug dealer or anything, but he had me over at his house a couple of times, and he says his walls are covered in masks, different types of masks, wooden masks, whatever. And he's like, I like to combine my two passions, drumming and masks. And then he would put on a mask and play, and then he would put on different masks, and he couldn't remember a single. Anytime we jammed, I'd be like, all right, cool, remember that thing last week? He's like, no, let's just jam it out and let's feel it out, So I was like, this is not going anywhere. And I had so many similar encounters where I was driving to make a band. I was like, let's go, let's write music, let's get it written down and start playing shows. And I just didn't get that. So when I found this Craigslist ad that's like looking for exalted, crazy tech death wizard, I'm like, okay, well, I'm that, because I think I'm so hot shit at the time. I'm like, yeah. And I go there and I just get blown away by like how much better all these guys are than I am. Specifically Spencer Pruitt, our drummer, then and now, who
Unreal.
had been very fast. I mean, I remember jamming. I learned some riffs, even though they didn't have another guitar player. They just had a bass player and the drummer, and then the vocalist, who was the one who wrote the ad, who was just kind of like, a wacky dude. And I remember us jamming out some ideas. I got shown a couple of riffs, and at the end of the riff, I was like, you are an insane drummer. What is this? Like, I need to be a part of this. But my problem was, like I said, I thought I was way better than I actually was. So they weren't blown away by me. They were like, yeah, you're pretty good, And the bass player at the time was like, yeah, I guess he told the other guys, like, give him like a couple weeks to practice, and they're like, okay, so everything sounds okay. but your sweeping needs to be like, you need to be good at sweep picking. So I was like, okay, it's not something I really ever practiced, but I went home for 2 weeks and I just practiced Jason Becker stuff. I practiced the fastest sweeping stuff I could find, and I just drilled it and drilled it for 2 weeks. And I came back and they were like, are you like a different guitar player? Like, what the fuck did you do? I'm like, all I did was practice. That's it. And so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, that brings a fantastic point up. In the modern age that we're in, we see like YouTube videos and ads and people trying to sell their guitar videos and being like, these are the fastest ways to make you become a better player and get better at this and stuff like that.
Right.
And everybody I've ever talked to that's like, does that kind of stuff work? I'm like, no. And they're like, what works? I'm like, fucking practicing. All of these big musicians that you see that are able to just shred and play crazy beats and stuff like that, years and years and hours of practice. That's what that is. They're not watching, you know, yeah, maybe they played along with DVDs and stuff like that, but nobody's buying the Secrets of Sweep Picking DVD for $9.99 from some random guy on the internet. They're going home and they're practicing it. Like,
well, it really comes down to, and like I taught guitar for many years, and it comes down to, there's sort of different groups of people. There's people that think that they can pay money to be good at something, which obviously not the case. And then there are people that they'll pay the money or not, or whatever, however they're going to learn, but they'll really understand how their brain absorbs information. And that's the category that I fit into, where I'm like, okay, you know, there's obviously a value in buying something that you own it. You feel like you should get something out of it because you bought it, rather than getting something for free, which is oftentimes less valuable to you. If you download something for free, you steal it or whatever, you're like, yeah, okay, I'll watch it, whatever, I'll consume it somehow. But if you buy it, oftentimes it's just more intrinsically valuable. Yeah. And so you might put a little bit more time into it. But however you get your information, whether it's through lessons or through online or through books or whatever, you have to understand how your brain is going to assimilate that information. And understanding, I talk about this a lot, riding waves of frustration when you're learning and getting to the point where you're frustrated and then coming back down, but keeping the guitar in your hands, but maintaining, now playing something that you enjoy, that you're good at, to bring you back up into this sort of confidence level, and just sort of getting that way. And eventually that'll go up. And I mean, at the time I had more free time. Well, I don't even know if I had that much free time. I think honestly, like at the time I was living by myself in an apartment, and I was like, this is just 100% of what I want to do. And I did work at a music store. Maybe I practiced a little bit on shift or something like that. But that was really what it was like. And so when we started to put the band together for real, because at that time we just had me, Spencer, our drummer, and our bass player at the time, and then a vocalist who we ended up kicking out. And then we got a different one, and then we kicked him out, or he quit. It was a mutual thing. At some point in there, we found Toby. Spencer had known him for years, and I actually had known him. He's our other guitar player. I had known him for years, just sort of peripherally, like, oh, that guy's really good. My old band had played with his band, and they came to my hometown from Vancouver. They came to play in a really shitty like hall that we used to have shows at all the time, and they all got hammered drunk, and like the drummer couldn't stand up after a set, and they left beer bottles everywhere. And I was like, man, these guys are fucking kind of whack, except for that one dude. That guitar player is pretty cool, and he was great on guitar, you know. And so I didn't really remember too much about it, but all the guys in my band were like, we got to get Toby. We got to get Toby. He's great. He's a super chill dude, really nice, really dedicated. And so his band at the time eventually figured out that they wanted to stop playing together. So they had their last show at this venue called the Rickshaw here in Vancouver. I don't know if you've been there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we took Toby's amp and cab from the stage to our jam spot. They never went anywhere else. It was like, okay, you're out of this band, now you're with us. And like come and I mean, seriously, like his skill, not only his skill, but his very unique way of looking at guitar. He's not as theory based as I am, or as Jared is. He's not as like trained in that way. He's more like just got this crazy awesome ear for learning and writing and just understanding melodies and writing harmonies. He's like the sort of like in a lot of ways the antithesis of me, where I'm like I overthink a lot of stuff and I make things too busy sometimes, but I'm thinking about it in theory wise, and I got more and more down. But the two things, the ways that we diverge, it creates this really cool meld of something kind of unique, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
And it's really cool too because like I love watching playthrough videos of musicians online a lot of times,
Mm.
and I've watched tons of you and Toby and tons of Jared and Spencer and all this stuff. And I noticed really quickly, I wanted to mention because you were saying like schooling and learning and stuff. I was watching one of Jared's recent playthroughs, or I think it was the one where he was teaching people how to do that bass part
Mhm.
in Drone Corps Aviator. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because I'm just like, at the end, I remember he's like, yeah, so that's Drone Corps Aviator. Let's see your videos and you play it. And I was like, fuck you. Like, come on. But so do you but the way he was talking about things, I could tell he was actually talking about scales and notes and stuff like that. So do a couple of you guys have like actual schooling that you took, or did you learn a lot of stuff on your own?
Oh, I love that you asked this. This is my favorite question to answer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Because I talk to Jared a lot and I talk about him a lot in the way that it's crazy that I'll tell him this as we're loading up an amp upstairs, or, like bringing merch from the venue back to the trailers. I mean, it's crazy that you have this piece of paper that you spent a lot of money on, dude.
Yeah.
And yet here we both are loading gear. I'm like,
Yeah.
we both make the same amount of money, but you got this thing and I didn't get that thing, but here we are. And like,
Yeah.
I don't, that's not a general rule. I just like making fun of him for that.
Yeah, for sure.
It totally
I
made
would too.
him, I mean, like, think about it like this. That guy never played bass before he joined our band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he got a bass after he tried out. He borrowed a bass. He borrowed an 8-string guitar of mine, I believe. I think it was mine, to learn a song on bass, so that he could sort of think about it like guitar and then bass. And then he borrowed a bass, I think, like after he learned that, and then he came in and he tried out and gave us one song, and we're like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Because I've
yeah,
seen that
you're
video.
really good.
I saw that video that you guys released after he joined the band of the song that he learned, and like
Well, yeah,
that's kind of mind blowing to me that like he wasn't playing bass before that.
no,
But it's an excellent point too because I joke about this on tour. There's a lot of roadies out there that have actually gone to school. Like
yeah,
one of the recent tours I was on, I was teching for a country artist, believe it or not.
hmm
And I was teching for the artist, and the other tech on the tour was teching for one of the hired gun players. And he always talked about how he went to a major luthier college in Michigan and learned how to do all this. And I was
oh yeah,
like, the same thing in my head, I used to make fun of him too, is because I was like, that's interesting because you went to this 4-year university and I'm doing the same thing for the actual artist. And I've never gone to school to do any of this. Like
yeah,
you can learn these things. And it's funny because I always knew I wanted to be a tech because I just love instruments. I've done
mm,
everything from guitars, bass, drums, all that. But it took me years to get there. When I started off in the industry, I started off as like a merch guy and then moved to production stuff and then moved to other
right,
stuff and then finally started teching. And everything that I learned was on the road. There are these moments where when shit goes wrong, a lot of people freak out and are like, they don't want anything to go wrong. For me, when I was learning, it was those moments where things went wrong or didn't work the way that they're supposed to that I actually learned the most about what I was doing. So, like, an amp went down and I had to learn how to fix it. Something broke on a guitar that I had never worked on before. I had to learn how to do that stuff. And I actually think there's a great value in just learning that on the spot, on the road, like in our industry as well.
yeah. I mean, totally. You can know all the specifics. All like, there's probably. I'm just assuming this just because I'm also not formally trained, but I've written 4 albums with the band and I've taught guitar for many years. It's like I'm sure there's plenty of base level knowledge holes in my that maybe if going to school would have filled, but that doesn't mean that I can't do the same work. That doesn't mean that I
Yeah.
can't be as good or better than somebody that did go to school, because we're in, I mean, from my position, such a creative, it's a creative outlet. It's not I'm not building a bridge.
Yeah.
So for you, yeah, same thing. I think probably, and this is my guess, is that a lot of what your job is, and a lot of the reasons why you're so successful with being a tech and going on many tours is because you're a personable man. You're just somebody who people like to work with. And let's say you have somebody that went to school and they know how to set up an instrument or do something 10% better than you do. For me, if I'm hiring somebody, I'd rather hang out with somebody that's cooler rather
It's
than I will look at technical ability first, but I'll weigh it heavily with just how cool it is to hang out with that person.
yeah.
And most of the time I'll pick the person I'd rather hang out with.
So I will take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we actually have a joke that a lot of people I've toured with where we say as a touring professional, a roadie, whatever your job is, front of house, lighting, tech,
Yeah.
whatever, 30% of it is actually how you do your job, your chops, and the other 70% is your hang and your vibe on the road, because these are
Yeah.
when you tour, you have to live with the people around you. I mean,
Sure.
so I've been on tours where we've had like unreal audio engineers that know more about physics and audio and all this
Oh
stuff that
yeah.
it's like mind blowing, but they're absolutely miserable to be around, and they
Mhm.
eventually get fired because it's like, we don't
Sure.
care how good you are. Like, if you're miserable to be around all the time and you're bringing down the rest of the crew and everybody around you, like, we don't want you here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is fascinating to me because you tell that story about how, like, when you started the band 10 years ago and stuff like that, you weren't as good as you thought you were. And it's like, fast forward to now watching you guys play, it's just like, in my opinion, if we're talking tech death and even just anything metal and technical, in general, you guys are one of those pinnacle bands that I hear a lot of people go to when they're talking about stuff like that, man. I mean, especially, I think I was a little late with Archspire. It was about the time that Relentless Mutation came out, so
Hmm.
2017.
Yeah.
Like a lot of other people too. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was the album that really kicked open the door for you guys for sure.
Yeah.
And like a lot of other people, my introduction was Involuntary Doppelganger, and
Hmm.
like the first time I ever heard that, and I've been listening to metal since I was early teenager. I grew up on a lot of different stuff, and the first time I had ever heard that, I was just like, wow, this is different. This is like, this is metal, but this is different. Like,
Hmm.
there's something about it. And it's the uniqueness of everything that every member brings to the table. Because when I first listened to Bleed the Future when it came out, that was one of those records that I think I sat back here. When I get new albums, I like to sit here with my in-ears in and listen from start to finish with no distractions, just so I
Oh
can
yeah.
take in the music, listen to everything. I think I listened to Bleed the Future, and then I came back the next morning and listened to it again, but focused on just the drums. And then I listened to it again later that day and focused on just the guitars. It's
Hmm.
one of those albums where you can listen to it 5 times in a row and notice different things that you didn't hear before from everyone. And it's a fucking great album, dude. Like,
Oh, I appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah. And I just saw, actually today is exactly a month since it released, and I saw
Hmm.
after the first week charts, man, you got, I mean, loading the charts in the U.S., Canada, hit some UK charts. I mean, that's got to be just great for you guys.
It's rough because honestly, when that first, I appreciate that, by the way. The
Yeah.
the first track that came out, the song Golden Mouth of Ruin, my wife and I actually did the video for that. We filmed it, I edited it,
Oh,
all that
no
kind of stuff.
way.
Yeah, I think it turned out great. And it was our first music video of any kind, really. And I've been writing riffs, and we had been writing as a band for that album since 2017.
Okay.
So we've been writing riffs, and we spent a lot of time writing. We spent dedicated like a good majority of like 2.5 years of writing to that album. And when it came out, and we had like a YouTube premiere, and we were playing the video through the label Season of Mist, their YouTube channel, and I was seeing the live chat, and people were really liking it. People were saying, "This is amazing, this is amazing," and that gave me a lot of anxiety. It was like, this is like something's wrong. I don't know why. I felt bad. I did not feel good that week. And as the days went on, I woke up and I'd be like, this is cool. Why don't I feel good about this? Like, and I would feel just anxiety and kind of like weird. It was so much work to put out that album, and we worked way harder on that one than we did any other album. And there was so much, just, it was like almost a full year since we no, like about 9 months since we submitted our masters, 9 or 10 months, submitted our masters to the label for before it came out. So there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen. Are we going to be able to tour it? Are people going to like it? Is it as good as the last one? So the week that it came out, I was searching for negative comments and I couldn't find any for the first 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, this is fucking weird. And I finally found one, and I sighed relief. I was like, oh my God. Okay, cool. Okay. I don't know why. I just felt weird. And then I started to feel okay about it. I guess maybe I built it up too much in my head. It's not that I'm nervous that it sucks. I know that the album is good. I'm very, very proud of it. But and we all are. But something about it was just it was a stressful release.
Was it like almost like a burden of the expectation, like you set the bar so high that people were going to expect even more after that, or?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to say that because I look at the album before Relentless Mutation. I don't look at it like, oh, it's the gold standard of anything. Like, I mean, it's just like, yeah, that's what we wrote. It took us about 9 months to write that album. This one took 2.5 years. I mean, it's just a different thing. And that one, they're about the same length, but think about it like, now we have to write an album that, okay, like you said, people started to notice our band with the album before this most recent one. And that was really helpful. But when you go into the jam spot and you go, okay, cool. So we got to write an outro to this song. Let's write this. And somebody comes up with this idea and we think, oh, this is really cool. We go an hour, 2 hours in, and then we realize it's the riff from a song off the album before. And we're like, okay, so now there's way more guideposts that you like. There's way more restrictions. It's like, now we have to not be derivative of other bands, but also ourselves. Cause now we're 4 albums in. This is our 4th album. Now we're like, things are getting narrower, and that's a scary thing. Now, one thing that we have on our side is that we always push the speeds on the songs. So this one, we have faster songs, and that does open up different possibilities, different things for you to be able to do. And it also focuses on, okay, we have a song on this album at 400 BPM eighth notes, which is basically like, some people say, oh, it's doubled BPMs or whatever. You think about it like blast beats. Blast beats are a certain BPM range because that's how the drums are. That's how they fit kick and snare, the relationship. So our song is at 400 BPM, the last track on this album. Yeah. It's the fastest song we've ever written. It doesn't mean I'm doing 16th notes at 400 BPM anytime soon. It's just, I'm just playing as absolutely fast as I possibly can. Yeah. And now we have a song that's that tempo. We can't make it a 5-6 minute opus. You have to make it 3.5 minutes. Or whatever, or shorter, or if it is going to be longer, you have to have a really big break in the middle, because there's just no way that we can all play at that tempo for that long live.
Yeah, and that's the great point. Is like in the studio, it's your capabilities are completely open, because you can literally sit and track one part and then put it out. But like, that's an excellent point to make, because there are a lot of things that I've heard from some bands where the first thing I wonder in my head is like, how are they going to do this live? Yeah. Without just an ass ton of tracks and stuff like that. And tracks don't bother me, to be honest, when they're used a certain way. And I say this to people on my channel a lot, because I think the term tracks have a very bad stigma to them, because people immediately think lip syncing. Yeah. But that's not what a lot of bands are using tracks for nowadays. They're using them for maybe the keyboard part that was in the studio that they don't have a keyboardist for, and stuff like that. And a lot of the times too, bands are running tracks live so they can have a click in their ears. Like, with technology moving forward, a lot of the general public isn't really up to speed with what bands are actually using. So that's one of the goals with my channel, is when I started it, is even though I'm doing reactions, which fucking thousands of other people are doing, it's like, I want to at least talk about stuff that people may not know from my background touring, and I've spent a lot of time talking about the tracks and stuff like that. Right. But that's a great point too. Is that song, being 3.5 minutes, at least it's in a place where you can pull it off live, even though you're probably going to be straining yourself, especially if it's later in a set or something like that. Like,
Oh man.
I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of live really quick, just to kind of change, I saw a few days ago, you guys had a couple shows. Yeah.
We played our first shows in 2 years.
Oh my God. That's crazy. Like,
It was
I can't believe it's been that
insane.
long.
Honestly, like I think about that. I've been playing shows, at the very least every few months for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now take a 2 year break. It's like a 2 year break.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Yeah, it was surreal to be on stage. It was a very fun couple of nights. Basically, what we had was we had a great show lined up at the Rickshaw in
Yeah.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
600 something plus 650 people or something like that sold out. And then restrictions got renewed. So that means we couldn't do it at full capacity, which means we would have to do a lesson to capacity. So we're like, okay, let's split the shows into two. So we did that 2 weeks before the show, trying to get people to switch over. Hey, can somebody switch over from this Friday or from the Saturday to the Sunday so we can make the show happen? Some people did. And then 3 or 4 days before the show happened, there are some new restrictions that came out that actually potentially let us have the show at full capacity Saturday night. And it's going to be Halloween night. So it's like Saturday, Halloween, costume contest, all this crazy shit. We're like, oh shit, mosh pit, first mosh pit. I'm so excited about it. And then the day before the show, they're like, we can't do it. So those 3 or 4 days, it was just absolute ups and downs,
Yeah.
like knots in my stomach. Like, can we just cancel the show? Because I can't stop. Like I need to stop thinking about the show. Like
Yeah.
I just, it's all I'm thinking about. It's like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Should we be practicing like crazy? Are we even going to practice Thursday because the show might not even happen Saturday? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it did get canceled, postponed till just this previous weekend. And man, it was very fun. It was a seated show, but everybody was standing, so that was cool.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was also the first time live we had all played any of the new material, and that was honestly, dude, I had this thought on the second night. So I'm playing and I'm enjoying myself, and it's fun to watch people's faces in the crowd. But there were some guitar players that night that were really good, local guys, really good guitar players. So here's the hole that I got trapped. And I never think about this on stage. I don't know why I thought about this. I don't do a lot of self-doubt. I'm pretty good with this kind of stuff. I understand how my brain works, sort of. I'm like, hey, if I'm telling myself some bullshit, then it's probably not true. I should just keep pushing ahead and do the creative thing that I want to do. I'm usually pretty good with it. On stage, I'm like, nobody told me that I played well last night because it's the second night of the shows. Nobody said that. Of course they did. I don't remember or whatever. Like, of course they did. Maybe it's because I don't play that good. And then I'm thinking, like, I'm on stage while I'm playing. I'm like, maybe I'm like the guy in the city that everybody's like, oh, his band is good, but that guy sucks. And I'm literally thinking that as I'm playing. And I'm like, maybe everybody's just being nice to me. And then I stop and I go, what the fuck am I doing? None of this is true. This is fucking insane. It's lunacy, dude. It's lunacy. And then I was like, okay, I'll just have fun. Like, but it's just funny how those thoughts make it in, and they just like they drill away, and you're like, what is this? This is nothing. Like,
especially if the show itself is not like what you expected. I mean, before I was a roadie, I was in bands and we used to tour all over. And I remember, like, we'd get on some bills where we thought the show was going to kick ass. And then the crowd was like super flat. And then I'd be on stage just being like, the same thing. The negative thoughts come up and you're like, what am I not doing right? Why can I not impress these people? And like, but I did see a hilarious video. I think it was posted by you, but somebody had taken like cell phone footage of the crowd, and you're just like casually just sitting there shredding, and you're just staring right at the camera and just like, dude, I laughed so hard when I saw that. And it's another one of those moments for me, like as a musician as well, where I'm just like, he has not put his eyes on his fretboard once and he's still just shredding. Like, I would consider myself a decent musician at what I did, but there are certain musicians that when I watch them, I was just like, it kind of blows my mind how some people are able to get so good at what they do, to the fact where I'm like, my brain almost can't comprehend it. I'm just like, I don't think I would ever be able to do that. And it's cool though. I like watching it.
it's all muscle memory, really. I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you know, and ever since the inception of the band, I've been practicing multitasking while I've been playing. I've been practicing that for years. So
Yeah.
while we're jamming, I'll be playing with a strap and I'll be trying to tap my foot at a different tempo than the song. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna challenge myself, and I'll do that the entire set in jam, and we'll jam, 3-4 times a week. Sometimes we jam five times a week, like a lot, and we have in ears, so everything is perfect. And live we don't play to each other, we don't hear each other, we just listen to stems. So
Okay, that is true. Somebody told me that, and I was like,
yeah,
really?
yeah. I don't hear anybody else. Yeah. That means that, if somebody drops a drumstick, then doesn't fuck anybody else up.
Yeah. Oh,
Or it
that's a
means,
great point.
yeah, it's basically like it allows you to be comparing yourself against like robotic edited perfection in your in-ears. So you just
Interesting.
have, yeah, you have like the standard set in your in-ears, and you're like, I have a click and I have a perfect mix. We all mix on our phones or whatever. And so we have, 20 tracks coming from the computer, all isolated stems from the albums, and count-ins and cues and tuning cues, and like all our patch changes, obviously, and vocal reverbs and effects are triggered and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just playing to the album, it sets that sort of robotic perfection that you want to try and match. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's some downsides to it. You definitely are kept less accountable by the other guys in the band on a show night. But that being said, I trust everybody in the band to do a good enough job where it
Yeah.
sounds good. So yeah, it's a really, like, if anybody's considering doing that, it is a great option, because you don't have to rely on anybody's mic being moved, on anybody's guitar playing that night being shitty, on the bass. Really, the power at the venue sucks, and so you have like this weird buzz from everybody's
Yeah.
instruments. You don't have to worry about any of that. All you hear is yourself, and then just like a perfect mix minus you of the album.
That's pretty wild, man, because I got to imagine, along with everything that you just said, too, it probably puts you in a really good mental space to hear all of that clear while you're playing along with it, too. Like, it's almost
Yeah.
like positive reinforcement while you're
Oh
playing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
that,
There might be some downsides to it in the way that it makes you maybe it inflates your idea of how the show is going, because you're like, oh, we sound perfect. It's like, well, I don't sound perfect. The
yeah,
rest of
yeah.
these tracks sound perfect. It's like, if I don't sound perfect, these other guys probably don't sound perfect either. But it's worked out for us, and it's also just so much faster and easier, and
Yeah.
just
Are
we
you
yeah.
are you aware yourself of any other band that does that? Because me personally, from all the bands I've toured with, I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do that.
Somebody told us about it, and we were like,
Oh,
that's a
okay.
great idea, but I don't remember who. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it wasn't something that we came up with. It was like, oh yeah, we heard one, it was some other, maybe it was like the Faceless, maybe. I
Okay.
don't know. Because it is, I think that the financial aspect of getting an in-ear monitor rig is, I mean, okay, so you're playing in a death metal band, like how many t-shirts do you have to sell to afford a
Yeah.
fucking in-ear monitor rig, right? I mean, it's like $10,000 plus and whatever. So there is cost prohibitive in our genre. Um, so that means that it's not super common. It is more and more common now with technology getting a bit cheaper and easier. But it's not super common to have a death metal band using in-ears, at least on like a local or like semi-international kind of level. But yeah, like all like I said, like the Faceless or Fallujah's now doing it. Bigger bands obviously do it as well, but like that in-ear monitor thing is such a game changer. And so we had wanted to do that for ever since we were started as a band. We're like, we got to get in-ears. Like that's like number one goal. Like we need to do it. And and then when we finally did it, we had like iterations of the setup where we would have an 8-channel in, 8-channel out Motu unit where we'd hear each other and a click, but that was triggered. You'd have a mono out from the drum trigger pad that triggers like a click and a sample track. And so you can't edit it. And so you only get mono, whatever, and the drummer's controlling it. And then it went from that to like, let's put everything on a laptop. And then we started adding all the vocal effects, and every tour we add something new. And I've actually programmed lights through that same setup
Yeah.
as well. And there's just so many cool things to be able to do with it that yeah, I mean the initial cost sucks.
Oh yeah.
But man, when you get to be known as like a band that sounds 30% tighter because you're in your monitors, like you're just gonna make that money back.
Yeah,
You
for
know?
sure. And the things you can do with like, not even just in your monitor system, but going back to tracks in general, like you brought up the lighting.
Yeah.
Like, I for a few years I toured with Walk Off the Earth, Toronto
Mhm.
band.
Oh yeah.
Their lighting show for their entire show was all DMX. It was just MIDI. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
they had a lighting director out there that his job was to set up everything.
And just oversee it.
But yeah, but the second
Yeah.
they triggered a track, that lighting show would start with it. And you're starting to see a lot of bands do that. Maybe not for the entire lighting package, because there are certain cues where people are moving around and you want to have other things moving in other places. But like,
Yeah.
a lot of the touring lighting packages that bands are carrying with them are all MIDI triggered now through their tracks. I mean,
Yeah.
we switched the latest tour I was on. When I started, we were all using tube amps.
Oh yeah.
And then going into 2020, we only used them for 3 months, but we switched to Axe Effects. We used the new Axe 3 systems, and we spent we had like 3 weeks of rehearsal time where we built the rigs and did everything, and then programmed in all the effects changes in our tracks. So now our guitar players, the first time we did a show with that, they're like, "This is awesome! I can run around and do other things, and I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about hitting the pedal board." Like
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Oh man, I'll never go back, dude. At
Yeah,
home,
yeah.
I have a Helix here, Line 6 Helix,
Okay.
and I have the floorboard. I use an XFX Live as well, but at home, I for streaming and stuff, I programmed all my MIDI changes because I just hate pressing buttons.
Yeah, yeah.
So even at home streaming now, I'm like, oh, I'll put in the extra hour or 2 hours or whatever to program all the MIDI changes because it's just
Yeah.
so worth it to do it.
Well, there were some times where me as a tech, I had to go out and do changes because one of the sets that we had with the artist I was working for, there was one song that required like the other guitar player stage left that I was teching for to go stage right and stand next to the guy so they can do a dueling solo, but there's
Right.
an effect change in there, so I'd
Right.
have to like crawl out there so nobody could see me and just be like, and like once that ended, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like,
Oh, that's funny though.
yeah, there was a lot of that. Like, and then the main guy I was teching for, I would keep his board in my world, so everything he
Right.
played, I would just be the one doing everything. So learning again, multitasking, like you said, I would have to
Yeah.
learn to like tune and possibly do work on gear mid show while also hitting all the changes and like stuff like that. And it's like I mean, it was challenging at times. It was fun, man. I kind of love those challenging moments on tour where it's like a triple guitar swap within 10 seconds going into another song or something like that. Like those are fun moments.
You probably have heard a lot of people say, now if you're working with MIDI stuff, well, what, you trust a computer? Do you trust the computer? What if the computer breaks? It's
Yeah.
like, hey, dude, what if a dude in the front row spills a beer on my floorboard? What if I fuck it up, which I will every single time?
Yeah.
I don't think that our live MacBook, which is like a 2013 MacBook Pro, like it's not a good, it's old, dude. It's like almost 10 years old, dude.
Yeah.
It's like that thing has never crashed on stage. There has never been a single issue with it.
In
Literally never once.
in the 6 years I worked for this artist, I mean, we used tracks the whole time.
Yeah.
I think maybe one time in 6 years, there was an instance where something happened where we lost tracks for like halfway through one song to
Oh,
the
yeah.
end of that song. And then they
Yeah.
were fine when we started the next song. Like those
Right.
mistakes don't happen as much as people like
No.
the people that say that are like, oh, the technology, the computer could die and stuff like that. That stuff doesn't happen that much.
Of course not. No.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only way that it would happen would be user error.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's like, oh, I fucked it up. I forgot to change this one thing. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, the computer fucked up. It's like, no, it didn't. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
It's like when people say their alarm clock didn't go off. It's like, hey, dude. you
Yeah, yeah,
fucked it up.
exactly. It's like, and we've had moments like that too, where if I made a mistake on the road, I would always just own up to it. I feel like that's
Yeah.
the easiest thing to do because at the end
Of
of
course.
the day, I found that if you're just honest about it and tell the person what happened, more often than not, their mind's just going to be put at ease that they know what happened. It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
it was me. I forgot to change the patch to the next song. That's all. Like,
Yeah.
so one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because you've built a pretty good reputation with your YouTube channel at this point. Have you did you really start heavily getting into that like when this pandemic situation started, or have you been doing it a
Yeah.
little longer?
Well, I basically I started doing I wanted to learn more music and I wanted to, play different stuff that maybe I was sort of just slacking a little bit on. So I was like, why don't I just film it? I'll film myself learning it, put
Yeah.
out these long form videos and whatever. And then people started kind of like being like, hey, those are cool. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like a cool thing to do. I can force myself to learn some stuff that I wouldn't normally, and I have sort of a way to potentially monetize it. So I'm monetizing my practice, which is like, well, how I mean, what a great idea. Monetize your practice.
Yeah,
Fucking
yeah.
perfect. And so then I started working with this company called Sheet Happens Publishing, which is just a great they're a great Canadian company that does tab books and they do artist approved stuff. They're great.
I was
So,
checking out their website the other day because of
oh yeah.
you, because of
Oh,
you.
great.
And that's the one thing that I really like about it is that with websites like Ultimate Guitar and stuff like that, it's like their official tabs aren't necessarily official. They're not from the band. They're from people that work at Ultimate Guitar that have a better ear that think they got it. But I
Sure.
like with Sheet Happens that it is like artist approved, the stuff
Yeah.
that they're printing. And that's like, at least for somebody like me, that would be a huge selling point because if I play something and I get the tabs for it, I want to know that it's right. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. How frustrating is it when you try to learn something and you get halfway through, you're like, I don't think this is right. And
Yeah.
then you have to like unlearn it. Like, oh, I started working with that company and things were going great. I was doing a couple videos a month or whatever. And I was doing it in between touring. This is back in 2018 or 2019 or something. And so I came home from tour in I guess it must have been maybe I came home from NAM that year, 2020, and my wife, who's actually also named Claire, um, she was like, you know what, we should just like do a video where we both learn something together. And I was like, no, that's a dumb idea. No one's gonna want to watch it. It's gonna turn out bad. It's gonna sound bad. We're gonna be playing at the same time. And she's like, hey, why don't we just film it and I'll edit it. And so she edited this first video of her and I putting something together, learning something, and we got like a pretty cool response. And I was like, that was fun. That was like
Yeah.
really fun. And so we started getting more and more into those videos, and now it's become like, I love editing video. As
Yeah.
it's just I love filming, I love editing video, I love um, sort of like understanding how to host something and push it in the right direction and getting better with that, getting better on camera, um, coming up with a format and perfecting it. Like every time you do it, make
Yeah.
it a little
Yeah.
bit better. Um,
Dude, I know
so
exactly what you mean right
yeah,
now. Like,
so yeah,
yeah.
so now the show is like there's segments, there's mandatory parts. We got a bullshit at the beginning. I'm editing it in my head as we go. I'm thinking about, oh, this is going to be a great cut to this. This is going to be, all this kind of stuff. And I love that so much. And at the end of 2020, or no, at the end of 2019, I got 10,000 subscribers. I was like, just by the end of 2019, I was like, yes, I got 10,000. And then I wanted to make it to 50,000 by the end of 2020, which I almost did. But now, now we're going into 2021 pretty soon. I think I'm at like 65,000 or something, which has just been, I mean, it's been a whole learning experience because I love video, and I love editing and stuff, but that's not all it is. It's
Yeah.
not just that. Your ideas have to be right down this specific niche, or you have to understand your audience as better or whatever. Like I put up my favorite video I think that I've ever done, which was a video essay about my dad and how he played video games when he was when I was like 5 or 6, and he would play Nintendo games, and specifically this one game called Wizardry, and he would spend nights playing it. And he passed away in 2014 or something like that. I think 2014. But the video was about his and I, like both of our relationship with each other, and the music from that game. And basically, like, I was like, okay, so this is a format, this is a medium where I can go, I want to learn the theme song for this game that I like. Okay, well, I'll learn it, but that's not all. Now that I'm learning it, I want to write a script. And I just like, a script just came out, and I don't know I don't know how. I was just sitting here and I was like, all of a sudden writing a script about it. And I'm bringing up all these emotions in my brain and thinking back. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to find old photos of me and my dad, old photos of my family, mix it together with stock footage to try and tell a story. And now I have like a video essay about music from a Nintendo game that I liked when I was a kid. I'm like, man, what job would ever allow you to do this? This
Yeah.
is the coolest shit. And
It's
I
so
just,
cool, man.
yeah,
Like, dude, and the funny thing is when I started YouTube, it was directly just because of like we were at a show one day and then they told us we're going home and they didn't know when we were going to tour
oh,
again. So I was
wow, yeah,
like, dude, I'll never
wow.
forget that. We were in Vegas. We finished a show. We were supposed to go to the airport and fly to Australia and they were just like, we're not going. And this was when there was
Oh,
like 12 total cases of COVID in the US. They
yeah,
shut everything down. And now look where we're at. And it's like people are touring again and stuff. But
yeah,
besides that,
yeah.
I originally just wanted to do stuff on Twitch because I like video games a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I realized really fast it's very difficult to get people to want to watch you on Twitch. So a friend gave me the idea to pivot to YouTube. And at first I wanted to do like bass playthroughs and tech work stuff to put on YouTube. And one of my friends gave me the idea of doing reactions. And I was like, I mean, yeah, I've watched reaction videos. Like, there's a lot of people that do them. I don't know if I would stand out.
Right.
So I kind of was like, well, what can I do that would stand out? And I was like, okay, I'll just apply my touring knowledge and my tech knowledge to this stuff. So while what I'm doing is not an original idea by any means, like some of the stuff you're doing, it made me learn a lot about this. I knew nothing about video editing at all before I
Mm.
did any of this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of crazy to go back and watch my videos from a year ago compared to now because I'm like, they
Totally.
look and sound like shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and some of those videos from a year ago are still some of my most viewed videos. But the little things that I've learned along the way are fun, and the little things you get to do to personalize your video. Like, for example, when I do reactions to bands, I put intro and outro music under my talking that
Sure.
you can kind of hear there a little bit just for background noise, but I always try and make it something that applies to what I just checked out. Or if there was something that another band that I brought up while I was watching it, I throw it in there. So there's been moments where I've seen comments where people that are like, I can't think of a specific scenario, but somebody would be like, dude, throwing that as the outro music in
Oh,
there, they're
yeah.
like genius touch. And it's like, I like doing little things like that with the videos as
Yes.
well. And it's really fun. And like,
Yes.
it's been an interesting learning experience for sure. And in a weird way, I feel more connected to the music industry now with what I'm doing than when I was actually touring because I've gotten to know other bands better. I've been actually talking to labels about doing stuff because when I do the reactions, I don't want to just do what everybody else is doing. There are certain videos on YouTube that are like standard go-to videos that every reactor does because they know that it's going to get views. So I very quickly pivoted to new releases only. That's all I'm doing on my channel. It's going to be new releases
Mm.
regardless of the band, whether they're signed, unsigned, whatever. And that caught the attention of record labels. So
Sure.
now weekly I talk to record labels about like, what do you have new that's coming out that I could possibly throw in my schedule? So while they're not paying me to do reactions, we have a certain level of respect with each other where they like what I'm doing, so they allow me to actually monetize, and then
Right.
I'll throw their bands in when they have new stuff. And it's aside from anybody else watching it, even if nobody else watched my videos, it's been such a cool experience just to discover new music that I probably wouldn't have heard otherwise. I mean, there are fantastic bands all over the world right now that don't necessarily get exposure in the US. And I think reactions as a whole have regardless of what the person does in their videos, I think reactions as a whole have actually helped a lot of people discover a lot of new music, and it's been really cool to see.
I mean, of course, yeah. The thing that you did is you monetized your just recreational listening.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I like listening to new bands. I mean, if you didn't, then you wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
I like music. I like listening to new music. And you're like, maybe you wouldn't do it as much because you're busy and you think, oh, I got better things to do today rather than sit here and put on my headphones and listen to a band for an hour or whatever. Yeah, maybe I'll skip this or whatever, and you sort of get exposed to less and less music. But this way, you're making a living out of something that you would do and something that you would love to do more. And, you know, you might as well just throw a little $ on there on the
Yeah.
YouTube monetization thing and fucking there you go.
And it's
That's
crazy
pretty cool.
because a lot of people have their own conceptions about how they think monetization works. And because of that, it also allows people to, you know, lie or kind of stretch the truth with a lot of stuff. Like I've seen reactors on YouTube that have like 700,000 to 800,000 followers that don't really do much. They literally just sit and listen to a song and then be like, yeah, that was cool. I liked it. And then that's about it.
Wow.
And then they put out videos where they're like, yeah, you know, subscribe to my Patreon because I don't monetize any of these videos whatsoever. And then I hear through talk on the side that these people actually do get their copyright claims cleared from labels and stuff like that. And it's like, so you get a lot of different people that are trying a lot of different things to make money. And for me, one of the things I've always liked is that I've been able to be honest with the people that watch my channel. Like I tell them if like I've been able to monetize something or I haven't. I mean,
yeah.
After my first year of doing YouTube, I straight up told people how much money I made just in that first year. So people actually kind of knew like what's really going on.
Oh yeah.
Because some people think that some YouTubers aren't making money at all. Some people think they're making way more than they actually are as well.
Sure.
Like, and just for me, it's been interesting to see how it works as well. And especially like with the copyright system on YouTube and with music and videos and all this other stuff, like it's way more work than I ever thought it would be.
Sure.
And when I see somebody like you that's doing your channel as well, and I mean, you have so, dude, even your streaming, like it's been really cool because more so than a lot of other actual musicians that like professional musicians that I've seen, you see some people on Twitch that just live stream their guitar playing, but like,
Right.
like you said, you actually do go through and edit and like have structured content that you're putting out. And I think that's really cool, man. Like not only just for you, but the attention that it could also bring to the band on top of that.
Well, one of the big things is that I also have like not only do I do a YouTube thing where I, you know, love to make a living off of doing that. And it's been great. I mean, it's been my primary income for however many, like a year or more or whatever, you know? And so, and that's been amazing. It's also brought so many more possibilities of working together with other companies for really cool projects. I did a lesson series with Riff Hard. I did a couple with them, a couple lessons with them, working with a new company in March for something similar. Not only all of that, working with Sheet Happens, all that kind of stuff. I also have started working, like you said, working with labels, talking about what artists we can bring on, you know, and that's been great. But I had one other the big thing here is that I have a big interest in promoting, like you said, my band and what I built, and my goal was I'm going to build up this platform that I can advertise the new album when it comes out, because I know touring is not going to be really a thing. And like you said, at the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, that was when I really started getting more and more into it. I had been sort of chipping away for 5 years or whatever, but now I actually had the time because I wasn't on the road. Yeah. So, you know, I'm like, let's get this up really big so that I can just make a single post that will have more people find out about the album, more people find out of my band. And then that became like, okay, I'll play some Archspire songs on stream, and more people will be like, hey, what band is this or whatever. And then I'll do videos about the band, and people say, what song are you playing? It's like, or somebody will say, hey, I didn't even know you were in that band. I love that band. I didn't know you were, I thought you were just like a guy playing the covers. Like I thought, I had no idea. So like so many things that kind of just, you know, it helps everybody involved. All the guys in the band, you know, in a way benefit from the fact that I'm putting in this time so that we can get an extra 50 people at a certain market for a show.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? That's kind of, it's a big driving force. And primarily, yeah, you're right. It's because the way that we would normally do that would be touring. Yeah. And we just couldn't.
It's funny that you brought up, like, people watch your streams because they like watching you playing guitar, not knowing you were in the band. I see that happen to Grant from Unleash the Archers all the time on stream.
Oh, sure.
He'll be playing guitar and people will be like, hey bro, are you in a band? And people in the chat are like, dude, he's in this band. Like he's playing his own songs right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool how people randomly stumble across the streams and just don't know and then discover something new.
Yeah.
Before I wrap this up, because I've had you here for about an hour now, and because of people's patience levels on attention spans on YouTube, that's about where I like to keep these.
Sweet.
I love to ask this question, and you were already talking about promotion. For somebody that's in the band, what is the best way that you would recommend to fans of your music, whether it be financial or not, that they can help support your music and your band?
My band personally.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like, it really is. We have a few merch stores. I mean, that would be number one. Just like buying a physical thing is always great. If you're a musician, we have, a guitar and bass tablature book for all of the 3 previous albums up for sale on sheethappenspublicing.com. Use code RODINE for 15% off. And yeah, just like, telling your friends about the band, because I mean, the more people that get into the band, the more likely we are to come to your city to play a show, which means everybody wins and we'll have fun and we can say hi and everything will be great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the old school metal way, man. Word of mouth. Just show everybody. I mean, that's when I was younger. That's how I discovered most of the bands that I fell in love with that shaped what I listen to now. Somebody had like an older brother that had a bunch of awesome metal CDs, and that's how we found them. Like,
oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So, well, dude, I can't thank you enough. I honestly feel like we probably could have sat here for another hour because there were some things that kept coming up that I wanted to keep talking about, but we didn't have time. But maybe one of these days, you could join me on Twitch, or we could have you on here for another one of these and just talk about more because,
that sounds good.
There's definitely a lot to break down. But
yeah,
just as a reminder to everybody that may be watching this, ARCHSPIRE'S brand new CD, Bleed the Future, is out now. It has been out for about a month now. It is absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend that you check it out. Dean, thank you very, very much for your time. This was awesome.
Oh, hey, no problem. Thank you for all the kind words that I definitely did not pay you to say. Did not bribe you to say those words.
Dude, this was great, man. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and maybe we'll have you back on here sometime soon.
Great. See you then.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Bye.